Hey everyone, Coach Mike here, and welcome back to another episode of the Language of Leadership. We're joined today by Sue Dyer, who has helped more than 48,000 executive leaders create high trust business cultures. She's been known as the godmother of partnering over her work for the last 35 years, and she's worked on over 4,000 projects worth over $180 billion to perfect her partnering approach model. And of course, we're super excited to be with you here today, Sue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mike, for having me. My real privilege to be here and to share some ideas and thoughts that might be of help to those who are new leaders or aspiring leaders.
Well, the books that you've written, Partner Your Project, Working Together, and On Time, On Budget, are largely focused on partnering and project management. This most recent book, The Trusted Leader, which I got a copy here in my Kindle version, really opens up into themes of leadership and how to build trusted relationships with teams and with your colleagues. At a high level, can we just start with, what do you think a leader is, or who is a leader? And then what's the difference between a leader and a trusted leader?
Yeah, those are good questions. So I would say that my definition of leadership might be a little different than what most people think. Most people think that a leader is someone who has authority. They're the decision maker. They are the head of an organization or a group, or they're the ones who I call boss. But in my definition of a leader is that you cannot be a leader unless you have followers. And following is 100% voluntary. And people follow you because they trust you. So if there isn't trust, then there really isn't leadership. And so many leaders in the past 100 years, maybe even more, leaders have taken a more coercive manner, maybe more a forced approach to leadership. And certainly at times, maybe there's reasons to do that, like when there's safety and security and issues like that, of course. But if you really want to create optimization, high productivity, creativity, continuous improvement, that approach does not yield the same results as having a high trust environment. So when you have a high trust environment, the leader's job, the primary job of the leader, is to create a high trust culture, meaning that the people that are going to be working with you or for you trust you enough to say, gee, I may not know this person, but I feel strong enough that I will say, I'll be a part of this. I think I'll be a part of this. This seems pretty cool. And so I feel like I'm choosing to be a part of this team, this business, this effort. And so does everyone else. So pretty quickly, because we're all there by choice, we begin to feel this sense of cohesion, this like we're in this together. We're a team. We are going to make things happen together. And that cohesion leads to a sense of commitment. Certainly a commitment to our leader, a commitment to our mission, a commitment to each other. But I know we really have it when the team starts saying things like, we're committed to doing whatever it takes to be successful. Now and only now have you created the right atmosphere that allows for creativity, innovation, continuous improvement to happen. It is impossible to have it happen if you don't create this relationship. It's because of the way the brain works. The brain works to where it has to be this floating, open-minded, psychological safety in order for creativity to begin to emerge. And so you've created this now in this team, and they're going to see every issue, problem, challenge as an opportunity to come together and co-create solutions that may actually make it better. So everyone becomes an opportunity. And I've had teams that worked on projects that a couple of years ago would have taken 2 years to complete, but these teams came together and they did the same work in 90 days. Yeah. $1 million worth of work put in place over 90 days, whereas 2 years ago, that project would have been 2 years, maybe longer. And so it's this ability for these teams to come together and co-create solutions. And then, of course, they bought into the solutions and they implement the solutions. And as new challenges come up, they address those as well. And so this leads to the growth of the people, improvements, of course, and the growth of the people, the growth of the businesses, the growth of everyone in the economy. I mean, that's how growth happens. And on the other side of the continuum, where you have fear as your basis, it begins to create the fear of being punished. And people don't want to be punished. People want to do a good job. They don't want to be punished. And so they do their job as they're told to do their job. But then they wait around waiting to be told. And so you're not engaging this creativity. People feel as though they're being forced to do something, maybe in a way they wouldn't really choose to do it. And so the mode of operation for this team, instead of cohesion, becomes coercion. And the coercion leads to compliance. So you tell me what to do. I love my job. I'm going to do my job. I want to do a good job. I'm going to do it. And so you tell me to jump, I'm going to jump. You tell me to do something else, I'm going to do it. And those people that work for me, they're going to do that for me too, because that's how we operate. And so over time, compliance looks like we're doing really well. Everything settles in, everything's going well, that's great. The challenge is that a problem always pops up. And so when there's a problem, these teams get frozen. It's sort of like if you're standing, you're standing in the front of a truck, you see the truck coming, but it runs over you. You can't get out of the way because it's not my job. Nobody's told me what to do. The other thing you'll see on teams like this is communication becomes very stifled. Like nobody tells anybody anything, because to speak out of turn would mean that you're not doing your job, basically. So there's no communication. So the people at the top who could maybe do something, or people who want to know, don't know because nobody tells them. So they don't know what's going on. And so what we've seen over and over and over is this leads to the failure of the project they're working on, or the business, or whatever they're trying to do. So this fear, this way that we have led for hundreds of years, really does not optimize the team's resources. It does not create a team. It creates individuals acting in compliance. And compliance and commitment are two very different things. So that's kind of my in a nutshell, how I would say the difference between a trusted leader and a feared leader, and what a leader is.
Well, I think, Sue, you neatly map that out for us, where we have compliance on one side, commitment on the other, coercion over here, cohesion over here. And it doesn't sound like every leader can just snap their fingers and immediately become that leader that's trusted and creating a cohesive environment. What are some of the mistakes or the challenges that you've seen maybe first-time leaders or leaders earlier on in their career make on their quest to become that trusted leader? And then maybe we can go on from there to talk about your partnering approach and how that works.
I think new leaders, this is what I've seen over and over. New leaders are very excited. And of course, they're going to model whatever they've seen. So if they're in a fear business, they're going to operate in a fear methodology. If they're in a high trust, they're going to work to create trust. But I still think there's just the starting point of most leaders is they maybe get a little hard-handed. They try hard. They know the rules. That's usually what I say. Like, they know the rules, and so they can go in and sort of expect people to comply to the rules, not realizing they're moving their leadership style over onto the feared style, instead of creating a forum for a dialogue and conversation and understanding and co-creation of what it is we want to do as a group. So their approach often is more, because they're fearful themselves, it just sort of plays out because I'm new, I don't know what I'm doing. So that fear just sort of plays out with unintended consequences. And so then as they get more seasoned, you begin, like, the light bulb moment comes on at some point. Oh, maybe I need to be asking questions instead of telling people what it is or citing rules. That's what I see a lot.
So for those newer leaders, or maybe even an experienced leader in a new role or a new team, they may have their own fears or insecurities or infirmities, and they gravitate towards something that they feel like maybe they have more control over. These rules, these disciplines, which in many ways is almost a little bit of a confusion as a leader too, because we've been taught, or we've been brought up to say, as a leader, we're going to hit this goal, or we're going to get the team to execute and achieve, and that's the role of a leader. It sounds as though that there might be different ways to go about this.
Absolutely. That's what I'll just tell you, the very first meeting I ever went to when I was in construction as the executive director, there was 200 construction companies, and we had a meeting, and as they were removing the dinner plates, I heard all this commotion, and there was actually a knockdown, drag-out fight in the men's bathroom. So these guys never stopped competing with each other, and they really didn't like each other. I mean, there was nothing that was going to bring them together. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of people see business or even leadership, as getting one up on someone else, instead of realizing that the most effective leaders you've ever seen in history are always the people who can marshal other people to join them and be a part of something. And so I think that's what's happened in this day and age. What I have seen is that the old models can't work if we are interdependent. And as the world has become more and more and more interdependent, then the only thing possible is a win-win or lose-lose, because we need each other in order to win. So anytime anyone in the value chain in your business, or your value chain of what you're trying to do, is not cooperating, that's a lose for everyone. You may just be losing resources, but you're losing.
That's such an interesting insight. So as the world becomes more interconnected, which we've seen as a larger trend, whether you want to refer to it as globalization or more complex supply chains, whatever it is, the behavior of other people in that value chain has a greater effect on whether or not we're successful. And so that classic Nash equilibrium, or the classic game theory matrix or negotiation matrix of win-win, lose-lose, win, lose, lose, win, really actually falls on that diagonal now. Am I understanding your point right? It's either going to be win-win or lose-lose. So we really have to work well.
Nothing else becomes possible.
Wow.
Yeah. And most business people, most government leaders, I think, are in denial of that. However, COVID was such a perfect example of how interdependent the world is. You just have to look at the map and you can see we are all one. We are, there's no different. We are here, we are together. And so the more we become more interdependent, the better it is for the world because of the creativity that can emerge, but it also makes the leadership styles have to shift.
I'm with you, Sue, on that sentiment, and I think we share a sense of optimism as well. That even if the situation is challenging and dynamic and complex, that whether it be across oceans or across personal differences of background or belief, we can still partner to achieve and reach an awesome goal. And maybe this is a good time for you to be able to share with us what is the partnering
Yeah.
approach?
So I developed the partnering approach some years ago. Actually, this has been my life's work for 35 years. And there's 5 models. So one model I call the partnering approach. And it really, I created this because as I began to teach leadership to a broader group of people, I realized that if I really wanted to create a highly functioning, high cohesion team or business, the first thing I had to do was help the leaders think and act in a high trust manner. Because without that, we could spend all of our time and energy trying to work with the team or the business, and we can get somewhere, but we couldn't get where we could get if we had the leaders who create the policies, practices, and processes on board. So that's why I started with this one. And so the partnering approach has 2 components to it. The first is that is how we think, and it's the 10 partnering principles. And these I created over these 35 years of how to have an intention. So you bring that intention to what you're trying to do, and there's 10 of them, so you can practice them, use different ones at different times. And I really believe it's about training your brain. So you're training your brain to think differently. And so that's what the intentions do, or the principles. And the other part of it is the values. So there's 6 partnering values. And these are things, when you embrace it, they naturally begin to create the atmosphere of the culture of high trust, high collaboration. And those things work to take what's in your head and what you're trying to create and put it into the behaviors of all the people. So they're behaving in a manner that's consistent with high trust. Because if you can't see someone's values, but they show up in your attitudes and they play out in your behaviors. And you've probably been in groups where the culture is so strong, it's so cohesive, that when someone comes into that culture, they normalize to the norms of that group. You've also seen where your culture is strong and someone comes in and they don't fit. Now they say, oh, I don't think I fit here. They self-select out. They'll also self-select in. So a very strong culture is a great way to make sure that you've got everyone operating together. The other thing I see, because I talked to some CEOs where they say, my business grew so fast that I didn't have time to think about the culture. I couldn't get all the systems and processes together. The thing is, if you can create this cohesive culture, you don't need to worry so much about that, because people will normalize and they'll help you build it and help you create it. And so you can grow as well. It helps you grow. Without it, you probably won't grow. You'll crash and burn at some point. And so that's it. There's these 10 principles and 6 partnering values. And then I did create a little methodology for training your brain, which was picking one every day to practice and insert into your daily activities.
Well, I wanna take that, what you just said. I wanna take that to the bank, because that, I think, is such a misconception that a lot of leaders have, which is, I can't spend time on creating culture because I have to focus on all these other things to help me grow. And I think what you're saying, if I hear you right, Sue, is it's almost flipping on its head,
Absolutely.
which is if you get the culture right, that's going to help you grow faster than even maybe focusing on the other things.
100%. 100%. And you'll be able to do things. You won't be limited in the way that you would be if you're trying to create it through processes. You still have to have the structure, sure. But when you grow really fast, there's no way to create the structure to keep up. The only way you do is you create the culture. Then the culture creates up. And then you got to keep making sure that the culture is strong enough so when people enter into it, they self-select in, they self-select out. And then the other people help them because you've got a lot of collaboration going on.
So these 10 principles for the partnering approach and the six sets of values, if I'm saying that right, they are combined together to give us both strategic and tactical approaches as leaders to grow in our partnering.
Acting. Yeah.
Thinking and acting. And they're detailed very clearly in the book. So we won't go through all of them, but we'll ask people to pick up a copy of the book and we'll link to the book down below so people can go get their own copy. Maybe you can just pick one of these practices just to illustrate kind of how this works for a leader. I know one of them you mentioned is daily journaling and focusing on your goals and vision. Maybe speak about that one or speak about another one of your personal favorites so the leaders who are listening and watching can just get a clear idea of the type of things you recommend.
Let me pick one principle and one value. So one principle I think that is so important is people don't argue with what they help to create. That is a principle. And we use it all the time in our business because in construction, you've got hundreds of companies who have to come together to build a project. And they don't know each other, and they all bring their own culture. So you create a forum, and you can do this in any business, in any group. You need to create a forum, and I mean like a meeting where you bring together the people to talk and understand each other, because I trust completely that there is a collective wisdom in that group. And if, as a leader, I can tap into that collective wisdom, I am going to get something extraordinary that I couldn't get on my own. I mean, I could go ask all the individuals, but that's not going to be the same as tapping into the collective wisdom of this group. So creating a forum, and the only way it works is you have to have psychological safety. People can tell the truth, their truth, and your truth may be very different from my truth, and that's okay. You're in China, and I'm here in California, and we look outside. I see a blue sky, you see a blue sky, but it's not the same. It's where we see things from our own perspective, and that is the magic. Because when you're bold enough to actually listen to each other and understand the different perspectives, especially when you're dealing with an issue or an opportunity, you begin to see everything more fully and more completely so that you can co-create a solution that will be exponentially better. So I know when we're working on like disputes where there's a conflict and we use this process, about 85% of the time you can create a solution that will give everybody what it is they need. It may not be what they want, but it's what they need. And when you have an opportunity, you'll be able to create, ways to approach it that will be much smarter and faster. And the other cool thing is as teams get used to operating this way as a team that comes together to talk and co-create, you'll begin to get smarter, better, and faster. And that's really how you can do really extraordinary things, because instead of walking together, you start running together, and you just start, I've been watching, here we watch a lot of basketball, and they're just about to have the finals, and these teams are fast. I mean, they are just so fast. That's what can happen. You're a team, you're working together, you're like a unit. Yeah. And then let me just talk about one of the values. I think, trust, of course, is the highest value, but the underpinning of trust is a commitment to fairness. So if you think about it, what creates fear, what creates people to feel like I'm not engaged? It's when someone feels as though they're being treated unfairly or something that is happening seems unfair. And yeah, the world is unfair, but in a business or a unit or a team, there's these operating, the way we operate. If someone feels like something's unfair, then that's what needs to be put on the table and talked about. Why is this unfair? I feel it's unfair. I was told this, now this is happening. I did this, now you're telling me not to do that. Let's talk about it so that you can understand each other and then figure out approach to move forward together. If you never talk about it, it just stays, well, then you go onto the fear side. I'm not going to tell you because I'm afraid. I'm not going to talk about it. We're not going to do, you just tell me, just do your work. Then you're on the fear side again. So you have to talk about these things and work through them. And I've never seen a team that put fairness on the table, even when, they were about to go to litigation, that could not figure out a way to create a fair solution. People inherently understand fairness.
There's a lot to unpack there. And I want to ask you in a moment, maybe a tricky question about fairness, because I think that there's another perspective that I've heard and that I've held in my mind at certain moments about fairness. But before that, what's your call for the NBA Finals? Is it Golden State over Celtics in 5 and 6?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Let's see how 5 sounds good. That's probably right. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be rooting for the Dubs this week and next week.
Since they are our team. Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. And let's get Steph Curry that Finals MVP.
Yeah.
Let's bring it home.
Nice for him. Yeah.
So on fairness, I think another opinion that I've heard, and frankly, I've held this belief in my mind as well at different points in my life, which is everyone wants to be treated fairly, except they also want to be treated as an individual, right? They want the rules and the policies to be clear and fairly and evenly applied to everybody. Yet at the same time, when people have a personal challenge or emergency in their life, they want to be able to take that personal time with their family. When they understand that it was because of an outstanding challenge or outward issue that the project was delayed, they want to be recognized and said, you know what, that was because of this special issue. So I'm curious, Sue, how do you sort of view the tension in your mind of everyone wanting to be an individual and being recognized for individual circumstances, and at the same time, fairness? Is it that there's guidelines for one, but then humanity on the other? Are they in fact one and the same idea? I'm really curious about this.
I see it as the same idea. It's no different than in a business setting where you have a contract. Contract says you will do X, Y, Z. Well, Katrina comes, something happens, you can't do it. Is it fair to hold that person completely to that contract and say, we're going to sue you until you're out of business? No, circumstances
Probably
happen.
Not.
Stuff happens. Just like now we have all these supply chain issues. Is it fair to say, well, you bid the project for that price just because the price is 50% more now? Too bad. No, that's not fair. So it's fair to everyone given the circumstances. And it's not what's in the contract. If the contract is a guiding light, certainly, or what's in whatever the guiding principles are, is certainly the parameters on which created expectations. But then there are things that happen and you have to deal with those so that it's fair and justifiable. You can't come to fairness if people don't feel like it's justified.
And I guess that all goes back to the idea of trust, which is you need to create that trusting relationship with your counterparties, your team, your employees, your managers, your leaders, whoever they are, so that they know when push comes to shove and Katrina happens or COVID happens, that you are going to be treated with fairness because you have that trust built. Is that fair?
That's right. And it makes great sense from an economic standpoint, because fairness will create faster, better use of resources. So even though it may look like you're paying more, you're actually going to pay less. The studies that we've done using this model shows that it's about 10% total cost savings. It's 10 to 30% total time savings. Increased satisfaction of about 12%. Increased safety for high risk issues. It's like double. And then there's other factors too, but you definitely get smarter, better, and faster.
Sue, can you share a little bit of your experience as a leader in an industry that is historically dominated by men? You've had unparalleled success in the construction industry, which is largely male. Most people have some preconceived notion about what leadership looks like. Did you encounter anything like that? And if so, how did you navigate this challenge?
Yeah, so when I became a leader in construction, it was back in 1981. So there were no women at all in the role I had. In fact, I was the first woman in the United States to head up a major collective bargaining unit representing 200 construction companies with all of the unions, all the construction crafts. And I negotiated all the contracts, all the collective bargaining agreements. And I saw it as a huge opportunity, because when I entered the room, all the old rules went out the door. And they did try, I never knew you could do a swear sentence that was there was no words but swear words, whole sentences. And they would hammer and yell and swear. But that was not acceptable. And so what I realized is that the rules have changed, and so therefore I get to set the rules. And so I was able to create a more collaborative environment, always committed to doing what's right for everyone involved. I'm not lobbying for my side or my group. We are interdependent. I need you, you need us. What can we do to do better in the marketplace? What can we do better in the world? What can we do better as an industry? What are challenges? How can we make sure people have what they need? The workers are working hard. They're giving their lives to the companies. What do we need to do? And so we were able to negotiate contracts that everyone thought was impossible. And we did it over and over and over. That's why they started calling me the snake lady. I thought at first I was quite like, what? What are you calling me the snake lady? But then I realized a snake can eat 100 times its own weight.
Wow.
Wow. That's what my staff told me anyway. So I really think that being a woman in a man's world has, the other thing that I found is that particularly in like construction, and I don't find this in every industry, it's sort of very entrepreneurial, very bootstraps. You create your own success, and they kind of don't care if you're purple, green, whatever you are. If you can do the job, they're like, yay, So I think there was an opportunity there that might not have been in other industries, actually. And
brilliant.
Found huge acceptance there. And if you can help them, and your heart's in the right place to do what's right for the industry or for a particular company, then you just keep moving along. I also have seen my work, because it's changing culture in an entire industry. I sort of see it like a landslide. It's sort of like slow, but you just keep it moving. You just keep it moving. Occasionally it goes a little bit farther. And so that's been for 35 years. You just keep it moving like a landslide. and it begins to change.
So there's a degree of patience, but it's focused and consistent effort in one direction. And over time, you're able to see the fruits of your labor.
If you really think about culture change a lot, it doesn't just happen like, oh, we're going to turn the light bulb on. It happens with people, individual people, like getting it, understanding, experiencing it, personal. And so you find people that are groups of people that have that, and then other groups see that and they go, what are you doing? How did you do that? And then other groups see that and say, well, how are you doing that? And then it begins to, that's how it, so you just keep doing it, one person, one project, one group at a time, and it just keeps. So it's like leadership isn't just for people at the top. You need trusted leadership at every single level of a business, an organization, a government. You need leadership, and right where you are, you can become the trusted leader. And it's like throwing a rock into a pond. You make the ripples. You make the ripples right where you are.
I think that's such a positive note for us to wrap up on, Sue, that anyone in an organization without a specific role can be a leader. It's about cooperation and it's about commitment. It's not about coercion. It's about leading with trust and not about fear. And that can happen at any level of the organization. And frankly, that can also happen in our families and our communities as well.
Absolutely.
Sue, this has been so fun. Where can our viewers and listeners go to find out more about your work?
Well, I have podcasts. It's called Lead with Trust. They can jump out on that. And also, my website is sudyco, sudyco.com.
Brilliant. We'll link to that below.
Great. Thank you.
Sue, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's such a pleasure.
Look forward to having you back on again soon.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.